The bombs are still falling. The missiles are still flying. And the man in the White House just told the world a story that Tehran flatly called a lie. Trump went on NBC and said Iran wants to make a deal. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araqi went on CBS the very next morning and looked straight into the camera and said, "We never asked for a ceasefire. We never asked even for negotiation." Two men, two completely different realities. And somewhere in between, more than 1,300 people have already been killed in Iran alone. This isn't just a diplomatic disagreement. This is a crack in the foundation of how America wages war in the 21st century through narrative control. Trump posted on Truth Social that Iran is totally defeated and wants a deal, while Iran's foreign minister is publicly declaring they will defend themselves as long as it takes. That's not a negotiation gap. That's two parallel universes colliding on live television. Israel is launching fresh barrages of strikes on western Iran. The Strait of Hormuz, the artery through which nearly a fifth of the world's oil flows, is being choked off. Regional allies tried to open ceasefire channels. Both Washington and Tehran shut those doors. What you're watching right now is not a war that's winding down. It's a war that both sides have decided to keep fighting, while the American public is being told a very different story. And that gap between what you're told and what is actually happening. Let me take you back to where this really started, because if you don't understand the beginning, you won't understand why this war feels like it has no exit door. In early 2025, Trump came back into office with two things on his mind: maximum pressure on Iran and a nuclear deal he could put his name on. He sent letters. He set deadlines. He sat his envoy Steve Witkoff across from Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araqi in Oman, then in Rome, then in Muscat. 3 rounds of talks. And by all public accounts, both sides said the conversations were constructive. That word, constructive, is the diplomatic equivalent of saying you had a decent first date, but you're not calling back. It means nothing happened. Trump set a 60-day deadline for Iran to reach a nuclear agreement. And when that deadline passed without a deal, the bombs started falling. Just like that. Months of diplomacy, gone overnight. And here is what you need to sit with for a moment. Iran's foreign minister said his country had a very bitter experience of talking with Americans, and noted that the U.S. had spoken of progress after 3 rounds of talks before launching the opening strikes alongside Israel on February 28th. Think about what that means from Tehran's perspective. They sat down at the table. They showed up. They talked. And then the country they were negotiating with launched one of the most devastating air campaigns in the modern Middle East. So when Iran's foreign minister stands in front of a camera today and says he sees no reason to negotiate, that is not posturing. That is a government that believes, based on lived, recent experience, that talking to Washington is a trap. Now let's talk about what actually happened on February 28th, because the scale of that opening strike is something the American media has not spent enough time explaining to you. The opening salvo on February 28th assassinated Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and several family members in Tehran, based on the apparent assumption that eliminating the head of state would cause the instant capitulation of the Iranian government. That was the bet. Kill the supreme leader, watch the regime collapse, declare victory, and go home. It was a clean, surgical theory of war, and it was completely wrong. Instead, the Iranian establishment swiftly appointed Mojtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader, and Iran's vast missile forces continued firing. You don't win a war by cutting off the head of a snake that grows a new head within 48 hours. And the human cost of being wrong about that assumption is something you deserve to hear plainly. Among the Iranian dead are 200 children and 11 healthcare workers. In the southern city of Minab, a strike obliterated a girls' elementary school, killing 165 people, mostly young students. 165 children. In a school. And while the U.S. says it is investigating, independent analysts point to Tomahawk missile debris at the site. This is not a clean war. There's no such thing as a clean war, but this one is becoming especially hard to look at. And most Americans are not being asked to look at it. They are being given gas price updates and told it will be over soon. Let's talk about the gas prices, because that is the economic weapon that Iran pulled out that nobody in Washington fully prepared for. Trump told NBC News he was working with other countries on a plan to secure the Strait of Hormuz amid surging global oil prices, while dismissing American concerns about rising gas prices since the U.S. and Israel launched their joint military operation 2 weeks ago. Gas was averaging $2.94 a gallon on March 1st. Right now, it is sitting at $3.66, and Trump is promising it will go down soon. But here is the reality. Iran has restricted traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, driving Brent crude oil prices past $100 a barrel, with wild swings ongoing and prompting fears of a global energy crisis. The Strait of Hormuz is not a side issue. It is the jugular of the global economy. Nearly 1/5 of all the world's oil passes through that narrow waterway. When it gets blocked, or even when it gets threatened, the entire planet feels it, from the pump in Ohio to the factory floor in Germany to the rice market in Pakistan. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has made their position crystal clear. If they lose control over the Strait of Hormuz, Iran loses the war. Therefore, the Guards will not accept any ceasefire talks, or diplomatic efforts. That is the Iranian military's strategic logic laid completely bare. The strait is their leverage. It is the one card they are holding that the entire world, not just America, not just Israel, but China, Japan, South Korea, France, the UK, cannot afford to ignore. And Iran knows that. They are playing that card deliberately, carefully, and with patience. Meanwhile, Trump is doing something that should concern every American who cares about how this country uses power. He is telling two contradictory stories at the same time. On Saturday, he told NBC News that Iran was ready to make a deal, but the terms weren't good enough yet, then declined to explain what terms he would actually accept. He says Iran wants peace. Iran says they never asked for it. He says the war will be over soon. Iran's foreign minister says they'll fight for as long as it takes. Trump has oscillated between demanding Iran's unconditional surrender, calling for a popular uprising inside Iran, and offering amnesty to military commanders willing to switch sides. These are not the words of a man with a coherent strategy. These are the words of a man trying every lever he can find because none of them are working. And the region is paying for that uncertainty in blood. Iran has widened the map of this conflict, launching strikes across 9 countries. Missiles and drones have hit U.S. military presence and civilian infrastructure in all Gulf states, including Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Oman, and the United Arab Emirates. This is no longer a conflict between Israel and Iran. This has become a regional war with American fingerprints on every strike. More than 1,800 people have been killed so far, including 8 U.S. service members, and at least 175 students killed in a reported U.S. strike. 8 American soldiers are dead. That number is going up, and the American public is still largely being told that this is about nuclear weapons and Iranian aggression, when the fuller story is far more complicated than that. Here is the part that should make every American stop and think hard. Trump is the first U.S. president to attack another country's nuclear program, and the first to explicitly join Israel in an attack on an adversary. Let that sit. This is unprecedented. No president in American history, not Reagan, not Clinton, not Bush, not Obama, crossed that line. And we crossed it on February 28, 2026, while most Americans were going about their Tuesday morning. The justification was nuclear weapons prevention, but Iran still has large quantities of highly enriched uranium as well as nuclear know-how, and experts warn that in 2 to 3 years, Iran could resume its nuclear activity without inspections and potentially produce a bomb without the world noticing. So the strikes that were supposed to prevent a nuclear Iran may have actually made a nuclear Iran more likely, because now the Iranian government has every reason to build a bomb in secret, with no international monitors and no diplomatic channels left open. The truth of this moment is uncomfortable, and it doesn't fit neatly into any partisan box. This is not a Republican failure or a Democratic failure. This is a failure of the idea that military force can substitute for strategy. The lack of interest from both Washington and Tehran in ceasefire efforts suggests both sides are digging in for an extended conflict, even as the widening war inflicts civilian casualties and Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz sends oil prices soaring. Both sides are locked in. Neither side has an exit ramp. And in between those two governments, real people are dying, real families are being destroyed, and the global economy is being put under pressure that ordinary working Americans, not the wealthy, not the powerful, will end up absorbing. What you are watching right now is not a war being won. It is a war being managed for public consumption, while the actual reality on the ground moves in a completely different direction. The narrative is Iran is defeated, a deal is coming, gas prices will drop. The reality is missiles are flying, children are dead in rubble, the Strait of Hormuz is partially closed, and Iran's foreign minister is on American television calling this an illegal war with no victory in sight. You deserve to know both of those things. And now you do.